an amazing guest, Michelle Santosuosso. Is that how you say it?
You're close.
Oh man, you
You're
want
so close.
do it for me. Say it for me.
It's Suoso.
Suoso. Okay.
Santosuosso. It's phonetic, but it's like it's 11 letters. I get looking at it and being like, what?
I threw a little Hispanic accent on it, I think.
Yeah, Italian. It's close.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. A distinguished figure whose influence in the radio and music industry spans over 3 decades. With her hands-on roles in radio programming and artist relations, Michelle has witnessed firsthand the evolution and challenges of the industry. About to delve into the stories from pioneering at Dash Radio, her insightful perspectives on the changing landscapes of music and media, and her candid thoughts on the future of radio broadcasting. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Joe. I'm excited to be here.
It's worth noting we have a little preface knowing each other thanks to our mutual friend, Demiza.
Yeah, exactly.
And where are you currently working right now? Syracuse, I believe.
Yeah. So I am based out of Syracuse, New York. I'm a professor for Syracuse University's Bandier program, which is basically a music industry study program that's within the Newhouse Communications School.
Is that new?
It's been around about 15 years now, but it was put together through a grant that the publishing executive, Marty Bandier, who was an alum of this school, put this together because he wanted to help educate the next generation of music industry professionals. So I'm grateful to Marty for doing that.
Well, let's jump to the very beginning of early influences and just how you got interested in radio. What was that like?
I was through my mom, who was a radio groupie. Like, the woman would listen 24/7 and chase the prize van down with our car to get a KCCP t-shirt because she was such a fan of all the DJs and the music, and so that was my introduction to radio.
Whoa!
My mom.
You just flashed me back super hard because I don't think I knew that aspect of radio, like that it was so coveted and chased after with the vans. I mean, I knew that they were located in certain areas and you can go pop up and things, but I never knew that it was like culty and very diehard.
Oh, absolutely was, especially over the gear, the t-shirts, the free t-shirts.
Whoa.
I varied station to station, but the one that we listened to was called KZZP in Phoenix. It was a legendary top 40 station, which I went on to work for. So I grew up I moved to Arizona when I was 12, because I grew up in Southern California and Arizona. So I'm 12, I go to Arizona. It's where we are listening to the radio a lot, driving around, because back then Phoenix was desert. There was nothing there. So it was huge stretches of drive to go anywhere. And they had a popular DJ named Jonathan Brammeyer, who is now he's like Hall of Fame DJ. He spent years at the Loop in Chicago. But that was the personality that kind of united everything. And that's what got me interested in radio.
What are you listening to at the time? Take me through the time period of like growing up and your favorites.
Early 80s was Michael Jackson was the North Star. Madonna was just coming out with a song called Everybody. This is early 80s. There was a crossroads that was going on in music at the time, and I was only privy to it because I went to a school called Gilliland Junior High in South Phoenix, and I was literally like one of the only white kids in a whole school that was like black and brown kids with awesome, sophisticated, cool, cutting edge music taste. So I got turned on to all of the early club records happening, like African Bambaataa and Kool Moe Dee and all the hip hop that was coming out in the early 80s. And that's kind of how I learned that music and just fell in love with it. And then, the connection to the club came a few years later when I'm 15, and Neighbors are opening up an all ages nightclub in Tempe on the outskirts of Arizona State University. And I started behind the bar serving sodas. But one day the DJ didn't show up. And the club owner, Glenn Cipriano, was so tired of DJs like flaking. He was getting really frustrated. And Cheryl, his wife, who was the manager, I was always a music head and always talking to Cheryl about music. So when this DJ doesn't show up this one night, Cheryl goes, "What about Michelle?" You know, they're like New York Italians. What about, she'll do it. She loves music. And I was like, "I'll do it, Glenn." Yeah. And I just jumped in.
That
You
is
like my
hilarious.
impression of the New
No,
York
but
Italians?
also I have a similar story where just the bar owner hated the music being played. I'm like, I guess I'll do it. I have
Yeah.
a oh my God, that's hilarious. I still want to understand how you're falling in love with music and your interest of radio at the time. Like, what is it? Like, are you listening to your mom, watching her, fascinated? How do you develop this fascination?
You know, it was the community that it built, and radio is very intimate and personal. My life was pretty tumultuous growing up. I as I don't think you know, but part of the reason why I even got on social media is because I have a book that I'm trying
To
to
promote.
publish,
Hell
you
yeah.
know, and all the literary agents were like, "You need a following." But in my book, I write about this. My father was in organized crime, and so he was incarcerated when I was 11. And part of the reason why we ended up in Arizona is he got RICO'd and thrown in jail. So we went from being a really well-off family that, you know, to like living in a trailer on the edge of a horse farm,
Wow.
in absolute poverty and going hungry. And my mom had to go to work, and she was like a kept woman, and then I had to go grind. And so I took care of my little sisters, and radio was a lifeline. It was escapism. It was
Wow.
entertainment. It was me being able to dream. I would look at South Mountain in Phoenix and think about, oh my God, someday I'm going to make it over that mountain. I'm going to go back to California. I always wanted to be in show business. Always. From the time I was a kid, I wanted to be a performer. Can't sing. That's a problem. You want to be in music.
But you
So I
still
always kind of had
surrounded
that thing.
yourself in the
Huh?
profession. You were still lucky enough to surround yourself in the profession, though, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to be around creative people.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get dissuaded off their immediate dream not coming true. Like, I know, even though that I make music, that I still have value to other creatives at the same time. Like, it might not be my main path in what I do, and it's just a byproduct anyway, right? Like, art is something I do on my spare time, but it's not like what I do every day, what makes me, how I'm trying to better the world. There's other ways, you know.
But
Interesting.
yet your path to understanding how to guide and put yourself in the shoes of an artist is that much better because you do it too. So you have this shared creativity and this understanding. And this is part of the reason why I'm such an artist advocate, because I care about, they're literally why I went into the music business, because I wanted to work with them.
I'm still shook though at how you speak about radio, because there's none of that mystique at all anymore. It's completely, I'm just like, wait, what? Like, I'm
Yeah.
shook. It sounds fun. It sounds like a fun time period just to be alive.
It was before corporate, and this is before corporate owned record companies as well. So the music industry was very boutique. It was local outposts that were down with their community and also helped their community, hired from the community, developed talent from the community, talent for on the air and musical talent that was burgeoning in the area. And you know, label wise, everybody was, you know, it was sales. The margin of profit between a mechanical royalty on a sale and a
Ugh,
mechanical royalty on a stream, like, let's not even go there, right?
it's
It's
depressing.
crazy different.
Yeah.
And corporations entering the fray in both radio and particularly in music is part of what has destroyed it.
Wow. How has the commercialization of radio impacted the quality of music, since we're talking about this?
Well, it's not just commercialization, because radio is an advertising medium, right? So it's always had, this is how playing commercials is how we pay our bills.
For sure.
What got out of whack was I call it, in my book, I call it franchisation of radios.
What year is this, by the way? Like, when did it get
So,
really bad?
well, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 was passed by Bill Clinton, and that's Senate, right? So that's when they got permission to go from owning 2 to 4 signals in a market to owning 8.
Wow.
So all of the big companies, all these corporations who had a lot of, were flushed with like cash, went out and gobbled up all the stations across the country. And another thing that's never talked about in regards to this is because these big companies, it was only the big companies that had the money to gobble up the cash. It really squeezed out any operators that were of diversity, because as the way that our ecosystem works,
Interesting.
it's like they're, all of these corporate companies are tilted this way, and very few of them are diverse. And it kind of squeezed that out of radio in terms of ownership. It was just became complete corporate
What is
bean
the
counter
process?
owners.
What is the process of that? Are people just tuning into not your station now?
Well, what they did, it's twofold. One, they decentralized, they delocalized it. So they centralized it so that all of the, to cut costs, right? So they
Mm,
cut all the individual staffs. They took the marquee talent in the best markets and then copied and pasted them all over the country to do air shits for all the other outposts. The sweepers and like the station elements that you hear, like Hot 102 or
yeah,
whatever that
yeah.
is, that used to be highly unique to the radio station. Like I used to go get artists to do that. Like at the Beat, it was the Mexicans hip hop group and Ice Cube, who are our
Wow.
voices. It was people who were from the
I'm
culture.
having flashbacks. I'm having flashbacks. I never knew it was that custom though.
Oh,
I'm super
absolutely.
intrigued. I never knew that.
It's part of the stationality, the character of the station to reflect the
Wow.
market and the
That is so
people.
cool.
Um,
You're making me realize how much culture is in this.
Oh, and they wiped it clean. They just sanitized it and basically made it a bunch of McDonald's operations that serve the same bad hamburgers in every market,
Wow. Going
that are
more
bad for you and
do,
don't do anything and don't have any emotion and probably give you cancer.
go, oh my God, yeah, of the brain, right? And your
Yeah.
and your behaviors. Just give me more insight into the background though. Like when it comes to like people like you, even Demiza, was there ever like a background coalition of meeting amongst radio people? Like how did you get to know the West Coast, for example?
Um, there used to be networks of people who, back in the day, we didn't have the internet.
Hmm.
And so we all talked by telephone. So it was just a network of like music directors from around the country. And there was a weekly conference call that was hosted by Trade Magazine. And we would all get together on the call and we would talk about what records were working in our market, what songs were popping up, the local stuff that was hot. We would tell each other about, songs. And so this kind of built a
Catching
network.
trends.
Right. Just trading information. But also, building relationships and finding alliances, and it was all rooted around a real love for music. Like we were all in it because we loved music. There was literally no, other nefarious agenda. Yes, radio is absolutely rife with payola, but
Yeah, yeah. Did
not
you have
not
examples of
crossover
seeing it?
radio. Huh?
Did you have examples of seeing it? I know you weren't involved in it, but
I
do you have stories
never
of it?
I never saw it because I think my mentors, a man named Guy Zapolian and a man named Keith Naftali, were very well known in the industry for not participating in that. So I think the record community, by the time they met me, knew that I was being taught and schooled not to participate in that. But it
Mm.
didn't really actually hit me how entrenched it was until I left the radio business entirely and went to work at a record company.
Oh,
And then
wow.
once you go on the other side of the wall and you see like lists of people, and I realized, oh my God, it's literally all of my peers. It's systemic. It's literally baked in.
Whoa. Whoa.
And it's extraordinarily expensive to work a record at radio because of this.
I
I
did.
had no idea.
I
I was like, oh my God, I'm like the only one. And my friend Joe, who I knew for years, who did promotion at Island, he was like, yeah, actually, yeah, you and Keith, you guys were the only ones. So I was like, great.
That is crazy.
So
But it's also crazy how those people find each other too, in that sense of like the good guys end up finding the other good guys. And the other thing,
exactly.
I definitely want you to go into detail on your mentors and stuff, but my story of knowing what you're talking about is I paid a lot of money to speak to someone very prominent in radio, and I'll tell you off air who it was. Basically paid all this money for him to tell me I needed to spend a lot more. like thousands of dollars more. And then he explained how payola works and how we have
Yeah.
to work it in each market. And I was like, wait, this is normal? And then he's like, well, I'm just telling you prices for an urban record. Are we talking pop? Because then he's like, the prices go way up to try to compete. And
Yeah.
then I realized, okay, so everybody needs $250,000 just to even have a chance to test a record in the market at this point. Blew my mind that, like you said, systemic. It's normal to pay the radio to play your music at this point.
And even to pay for rotation increases, which is something I didn't know until recently. I was like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
That
like
is unconscionable.
Even if the record's doing great.
Yeah, they're going to get that money.
Wow. So tell me about your mentors. How did you get into discovering them? How'd you get under their wing?
So I was a DJ in a teenage all ages nightclub, right? And I'm 15, I think, 16 when I took this job.
Super cool, by the way. That's so cool.
It was fun. And it was really just playing to your peers, right? Like I knew what was going on. I was a teenager. And the club became really popular. There were lines out the door. And when there was the local radio station, the same station, KZZP, they had a roaming Saturday night show that would go around to all the hot spots in the area and broadcast.
DJ Santo.
Yeah, exactly. So they came by, and the music director came up to me in the DJ booth. And I remember I put the security guard because I was like, I don't want anybody messing. I've got to queue up the next record. Like we didn't have Serato. This was old school, two techniques and a new mark, man. You got to
trying to relate.
Ride the beat.
I can't relate. Sorry, I can't relate.
None of this Serato bullshit. Like you got to do it raw, and you got to match that with the pitch fader.
You mean I can't just play a mix and walk into the crowd for a little bit?
So he came in and said, "Oh my God, this club is cracking. Do you want a job at the radio station?" He didn't say cracking, but he said, "This is amazing. Do you want a job at the radio station?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I went down that Monday and I started interning in the research department. So I weaseled my way into the programming any way that I could to get to the program director. This guy Guy that I told you about, Guy Napoleon. So I started bringing records directly to Guy and saying, "Hey, this is happening in the club. I don't know if the radio station is interested in playing this, but this one is huge, and this one gets the dance floor, and that one, everybody walks off the floor." So I would give him research information.
So it sounds like it's super cool. First of all, what records were you making at the time? Like, do you remember?
I do. Well, the best one was by Sir Mix-a-Lot. It was called Square Dance Rap. Left of center novelty rap record. And it was a weird like club hit. But that was the one that like got me officially into the job, right? Where they were like, "Oh, we need to move you into programming because you're able to find these records." And then after that, it was a lot of dance records. It was God, this is the 80s. It's so long ago. It was like Information Society and Depeche Mode and, records like that.
No Expectations also. It's worth noting.
What's that?
It's worth noting that you had no expectations. Like, all the best stories, there was like no plan. You weren't trying to do that, No,
not at all. I was really driven by passion. And I try to impart that to my students now. Like, just love what you do. And if you really love what you do, you never actually work a day in your life. And I work 7 days a week, but I never felt like I was working.
Wow. Super insightful right there. Yeah, keep going behind the scenes and stuff. I mean, help me understand programming and how it's changed as directors over the years, from that time period anyway.
Yeah, it's wildly different. Programming then was, of course, local. So you are looking at your audience specifically, and the budgets were bigger. So you had money to actually do research. We would call people on the phone at home and just like play clips of the song over the phone and say, "What do you think of these songs?" This was a system that the PD designed. What
were your cues to know that the songs were working in the club?
Oh, the dance floor would be packed.
Even if it was a new record, it's just like, oh, this sounds good.
Well, new music is interesting. So how did I know? I've never been able to explain the ability of how do I know? It is when I hear a song and it's a hit song, or I just know there's I literally get a physical, visceral reaction. I get goosebumps, or I get some type of emotional reaction to the song. So that's how I was always able to tell, like, ooh, let me try this. Like, there is a energetic transfer. That's the only way I know how to explain. And I was known in the business for having the and I saw Violet and you talking about this, or not Violet, was Wrath Coalition, I think. Wendy, yeah, that was talking about people in the business who have good ears, right? There's this thing called ears, and it's the ability to hear and hit records. Nobody bats 1,000 with this. Nobody. Even Clive Davis, who loves to say that he bats it for that. No, nobody can hear every hit record because the audience is always in charge, right? So they're going to be the ultimate decider. But there is definitely something about, you know, a special song that hits everybody in the heart. That's why it becomes beloved. And I just have that weird ability to identify, and I always did. Because I was obsessed with countdowns even before I got into radio. Like, I used to have my own little chart and try to guess where the songs would go on the chart. So I was always doing that naturally.
I've had a couple experiences like that, but the main one that comes to mind is when I broke Don Toliver's record Back End. I was playing it in the club, nobody knew it, but everyone was dancing, and I was like, this is going. Like, I knew. And then the fact that I knew who he was before he was mainstream, before, like, the video had just come out. He hadn't even worked with Travis Scott yet. So all of these, like, you know, prefacing back, and you're thinking back to, like, wow, I was on that trend before everyone. Can you talk about just the experience of finding artists or in that time period, how different it was?
Well, you know what's interesting? Because my students will ask me about this, you know, like, what was it like to, like, work in the middle of the East Coast, West Coast hip hop war in the 90s? Like, I wasn't thinking about it like that at the time. Like, we were not thinking about it like that. It was, you know, what is the next thing that I need to do to be like, it's the music industry, no matter what. One thing that hasn't ever changed about it, it is so competitive. It's competitive in media to get the attention of an audience. It requires a lot of work to be good at what you do. Broadcasts are ephemeral, so you're having to work really hard every day to get. It's sort of like the black hole of social media that, like you were telling me, you just gotta do your thing every single day and hope that the audience catches on to you. It's the same thing.
But
So
you said black hole though, and that's way different. Broadcasting at the time is a black hole. We don't even have record of those air, you know, like,
yeah, it goes away. Like, unless you're running tape on it, which is why I was so stoked to find those cassette tapes when I was cleaning out that office. I was like, oh my God, this is gold.
So you want to rip MTV now? Is that perfect segue?
Man, I just think it's wrong to be deleting history.
That's my whole life, by the way. Like, literally my entire life.
Just, you do archival?
Well, I just meant, like, my whole entire existence of the years I've been alive, to think like that just gone. Like,
yeah,
all of my cultural, historical relevance that formed me into being an artist, what are they going to have after me, right?
And it's important because it's a record of the time, you know, and they also have a lot of stuff there that's interviews and profiles and features done by journalists of artists that are no longer with us. Like, why, you know, I understand the laws of why the corporations can do what they want. They pay for the content, they own it. Yeah. But there should be laws around historical things like that. Like, why don't they give it to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Is it a monetization thing? Are they about to cash in again? Repackage it?
I don't think so. I think it's being cheap and not wanting to spend the bandwidth to store it.
Whoa.
I really think it's that.
Damn. I just cannot imagine that it doesn't circle back. Like, that's a real nefarious move if that is the case. If we can't even buy it back later, or it's just completely, you know, erased.
I think it's a signal of bigger societal issues when it comes to the corporate capture of American culture, because this is happening to everyone on every level, whether it's our personal jobs, whether it's our healthcare, whether it's our food supply, whether it's our clean rivers. We are at the mercy of complete and total corporate capture, and corporations honor nothing but profits. They don't care. They're not set up to benefit the people. It's not what they're for.
Gosh, so
it's
true.
Problematic.
What do you think were the most damaging changes to the radio industry in the last few decades?
The deregulation for sure, but also the increase of the commercial loads. So this is the trap that they're in. You know, I'm hard on radio, but I have a lot of friends that are still in it.
Yeah.
There, you know, in the original Radio Act of 1934, there was a limit on the amount of commercials you could play. It was only 6 units an hour.
How
You weren't allowed to play
considerate.
more. Because here's the other thing. Did you know that the airwaves, the broadcast airwaves, and I'm not talking about cable, all the Twitter dickheads that are attorneys come after me every time I bring this up on X, but I'm not talking about cable. I'm talking about over-the-air broadcast, the airwaves, right? Those belong to the people. The airwaves belong to the people of America, you know. So
public broadcast.
Yes, public airwaves belong to the public. But when deregulation happened, our government allowed corporations to do a takeover of the public airwaves. They did away with all of the community programming. Did you know the FCC used to have a rule that said that radio stations, we had to give up a minimum of 20 hours a week to our local community for them to come on the air and talk to each other?
Whoa.
Do you think that rule stayed in place after deregulation? And then I had Clear Channel general managers telling me years later when I went back to radio after it fully deregulated, saying, when I was like, yeah, we're going to throw this show, we're going to give the profits to charity, because before deregulation, we did, they were like, oh, our airwaves are a charity. But excuse me. No, that's actually not it. So it's that. And the commercial loads, right? They went from 6 to now 20. And we're in the era of Netflix, where generally the consumer has learned that they don't need to tolerate any commercials. So what are you doing?
Wow. You're making me remember. Also, I was competing back in the day for radio stations. They had contests. Like, they would be, you know, trying to find the best local artists, put them against each other. And I won first place. It was a huge deal.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. Shout out DJ Dizzle, Chris Fonseca. I still think about this. But my point being is, even before that, when I was 16, Rio Grande Valley, shout out Hitman. You know, I was getting opportunities to speak about my music on the radio. I didn't know that would be such a, you know, not big thing that doesn't exist anymore, or how hard and seldom that would be to come by later. But yeah, it's something you wouldn't appreciate until all this time has passed and you're like, that doesn't exist anymore.
And it's the way it should, because think about it. You were a young teenage artist. And so you're from the community, right? Yeah. You're from the community, and you're going on to look at what you're doing now. You're like a host. Like, they're not developing talent. Like, they could have nurtured you this whole time, which is what they used to do.
Yeah.
And then now you're like a podcaster. You I don't understand it on a business level. I never did.
Truthfully, the best part about it was I got to tell my story.
Yeah.
People got to know who I was or whatever, like just a taste of, and here's my song. And
that's the missing part of the ego. That's radio being taken off the table in this manner is part of what's affecting the ecosystem, because the algorithm can't do it. The algorithm can only tell you where you've been. It can't tell you where you're going.
Would you argue it's also in their best interest, though? Like, even if you're trying to shove this music down our throat in your own agendas, it would help if you involve the community to do that.
You'd think.
They're still shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, they are.
Wow. In your view, has radio failed to keep up with the digital advancements compared to other media platforms?
I think they're trapped in a hell of their own making. So part of the reason why radio will have its last profitable year ever this year, 2024, and the only reason why they're going to be profitable, oh, look, the chopstick. The only reason why they're going to be profitable this year is because of political advertising, right? We're in an election year, and local media makes a lot of money because of localized races. But they can't compete with digital because of the way Nielsen, and this is the part no one thinks about, the way that Nielsen rates broadcast is so archaic and bizarre that it traps radio into a box where they can't really maneuver, and they can't compete with the digital buys that can tell you exactly who the person is, when they listen, what, you know what I mean? Like, digital has a much more precise, obviously we're all being tracked, precise method of audience measurement, but Nielsen does not apply the science to radio listening. It's even worse. They have a gadget that they attach to people, and the way that they monitor the listening. If say an active listener of the pop station goes into a store and the classical station is playing, Nielsen, their little gadget will pick up the classical station, but despite the fact that the person who's wearing the gadget did not make the decision to put that classical song on, Nielsen will assign the classical station credit for listening because that person walked into a store where it was being aired.
Whoa.
Where's the logic in that in terms of real audience measurement?
Whoa.
So how do you build a station like that's your methodology that you're having to deal with?
Yeah, this ties into that deeper issue of how much of the advertisement is to bots.
Yeah.
Basically. But we're talking about on a real world level right now. We're not even talking about the internet, and we're measuring the data and statistics completely wrong. That really ties into why artists like maybe the NBA YoungBoy is so popular on the internet and never gets played on the radio.
Yeah. Well, two reasons. The first one is because, yes, they're never going to catch an artist that's in the streets like that, because there's no young people working at radio. And also, it's no longer targeted to young people. The average age of the person working at radio in this day and age is in their 50s. Like, young people aren't even...
So they want to hear the oldies.
Yeah, it's why everything's classic and oldies. Exactly.
Yo, that's crazy.
It doesn't have to be like that, though, because young people are still checking in because radio is free.
Yeah, I just check out just as quick, though. That's the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
I literally, yeah. How do you perceive the role of corporate mergers in the radio industry's decline?
I mean, that's what facilitated it. The corporate merging is what yanked off all of the great individual personalities. It's what stripped stations of their individuality market to market. It's what created the national playlist. They killed all the music trades, Clear Channel, because they didn't want any of their programmers sharing. I said we would get on a call, we would share information with each other talk about records in our market that were doing well. They stopped all that, and because they owned 800 radio stations, it was, there was no information anymore. They would not allow their programmers to share info anymore. So all the trades went out of business. I mean, it was so destructive.
Making me wonder if this contributes to maybe, like, is it tougher to break a local act now because of this? Like, regional is like nearly impossible if everything is a national radio.
Yeah, I would think it's extremely hard unless there's a small independently owned station in that market. College radio, I still think is, I'm getting ready to dig into this because I don't know exactly, because I've never looked into it. I've always worked in like big market commercial radios, but now I'm the university advisor for a student owned and operated. They own the license for a radio station. And I'm curious to know if there's more young people in colleges that are able to have some music freedom throughout the country, because that might be the lane, is to just go back to college. College used to break music before, and then radio got hip, and then now we're kind of back to, maybe we should go back to college radio and see if we can go there to get new artists some airtime.
It seems a little bit ironic too, though, that you can consolidate all the power nationally to where you would think, oh, we can just make a Drake whenever we want. We can break the next whenever we want. But you took away all of the local regional aspect, which is how you do the grassroots building to make enough. Is that the reason we don't have more superstars?
Yes, that's exactly the reason.
Wow.
The reason.
Super ironic, though. It doesn't look like that, though, if you get what I'm saying. Because all of the power, you would think, oh, you can just blow them up whenever you need. You have the push of a button, hit the button.
But you can't force the audience to love something. And you also can't, top down doesn't ever work. It's bottom up. So, especially in music, there's no top down in it.
That's
top
funny.
Down is like what everybody calls, I love the industry plant thing. It always makes me giggle because the bottom line is we can't plant shit. You guys are in charge of who hits and who doesn't. So if you don't like, what's her name that everybody hates with the long hair, the rapper, the young girl, what's her name? Everyone hates her.
Oh no, there's too many. There's too many.
It's
I
not
get it.
Sexy Red, it's the other one.
I was thinking either Cardi B or Meg the
Not
Stallion or.
not Cardi, not Meg. It's the girl with the blonde hair. What is her name? I'm
Oh,
blank.
didn't we talk about this last time? Was it Tate?
No, but Tate's another very heavily A&R'd. I'll think of it. Anyway. Oh shoot. She was in the box with Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl.
Oh, Ice Spice.
Ice Spice. Everyone says she's a plant, right? Oh, she's an industry. Look, you can't do that. You can't force someone to be popular. You can try, and they do all the time. Tate McRae's a perfect example.
Y'all were calling it that she's going to transfer to a personality, right? That's too funny.
Obvious.
Too funny. It's like there's no career here, y'all.
Yeah. So,
yikes.
You know, so and don't forget that the record label side also got corporate. So it went from mom and pop and like very local to like all these corporations. And it's interesting. You were talking about, wow, there's no longevity in this mindset. Well, you know, when you work in a corporate entity, all they care about is double-digit revenues for the next quarter. They are never thinking down the line.
Damn.
They're just rapacious and destructive for one reason, and that's money. It's gross.
Yeah, each day is exploitative as it could possibly be, I'm sure. Wow. Do you believe that the traditional radio format can survive in the age of streaming and podcasts? I think we're working on something like that, but
we are.
What are your thoughts?
My answer is yeah, absolutely I do. But number one, you can't play commercials. You got to figure out another way to advertise, and we have that secret unlocked. And you've got to involve the people that care the most, and that's young people.
Yeah, that's super ironic too. How has the shift to algorithm-driven playlists diminished the diversity and quality of music on the radio? A little more detail on that.
How has algorithm? You mean just the corporate label priorities? How
yeah, just no more diversity and quality of music.
I just think that it makes it harder for. Here's the, because it's funny, I get this argument a lot. People are like, well, yeah, because as I talk a lot about, there's a community element to loving music because, again, going back to nobody bats 1,000 with hearing a song, knowing it's a hit. And sometimes as humans, like, you got to hear it a few times, or you go to a party, you see people vibing, you're like, man, maybe I misjudged. This kind of sounds dope. Like that's part of like the discuss, and we took all that out.
That's so true. That's a good one.
I like their headphones. You're not around people. I like
how you just had to act out. All right, I'm at the club giving the song another chance again.
Yeah.
Everybody else likes it. What's wrong with me?
Right, like I'm missing something here with this groove or whatever. God. So like, and some left of center, like really interesting, new, not cookie cutter, not easy to, that stuff's going to get left out because, the way that these algorithms are set up, they're not built to show you the next new thing. They're built to keep your interest as long as possible. So they're going to feed your wants. And most of the time, the reason why new music is so difficult to break is because inherently the way people are resistant to new music. Like you were asking earlier, like, how did I deal with new music at the club? I had to be mad strategic with how I played new records. I would play it between the two biggest smashes of the night and like sneak it in there. And the second I would see people like wander off, I would like put I would give them, a minute and then I would seg back into another hit because you got to warm people up. People are inherently resistant to change. Wow. And new music is basically a change, right? So this is why old people hang on to my music in teenagers was the best music. No, it's not. It's just you're resistant to change. And so, that this is very human. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the way humans operate. And so the algorithms are basically, satisfying you. They're not challenging you. So it's like even on TikTok, it's 1 billion individual silos. It's not a community gathering space for wow. It's not. Wow. We're sharing information on there for real. Like I learned more on that platform than I had.
That was a good little metaphor there. That was a good one.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it is. But it's not a central gathering space.
Do you have any thoughts even more so on the value of Pandora? I think that says a lot. Pandora Radio, still relevant. Majority is European, I believe, for their audience, but just the fact that people are interested in discovering new stuff, maybe on their own accord.
I'm not surprised that the bigger audience is in Europe because they are just culturally more aggressive with new music. And new sounds,
like
and
searching it, looking for it.
yeah, and open to it generally. You know, the BBC lets all their DJs choose their own music. They don't tell their personalities what to play on the BBC. And that's also for the community, literally, it's government funded. So it's a different thing than it is here, where it's just corporate.
My other thought is people like 6ix9ine, Suicide Boys, even my music went viral in Russia, and people often go overseas to go tour there first, and then they come back, and suddenly they're booked all of the time. They're the biggest acts. Is this simply because of perception? Is that really what it is? Like, oh, you went overseas, you sold out a show, everybody thinks you're the biggest thing in the world now. So now you come home, and it's like, we're proud of you. We're accepting you now. That's our person. They represent us. What is that all about?
Well, live is a different thing because live music is essentially a math equation for everybody involved, for the artist, for the promoter, and for the venue, whether the promoter and the venue are the same thing. And you and I have talked about that a lot. But you know, you're not going to get booked for a room unless they're sure that you can sell those tickets and get those butts in those seats. No one's taking any risks with touring. Where with airplay and things like that, you will take risks, but not touring because there's money on the line with that. So what you're really seeing there is that your promoters noticing, oh shoot, he sold 500 tickets in Russia. I could sell 600, 700 here. It's just they want to know that you can move the tickets, and they can't trust streaming. They don't trust streaming because they even the very tippy top of Ticketmaster and Live Nation will tell you streaming's manipulated. We don't go by it when it comes to booking our shows. We want to know who actually has the pull. That's a whole other metric.
Nice. Yeah, making me think of like Google Analytics, who's in your store, who's the diehards that are buying items. Let's go to those cities. They're thinking way deeper on running ads than just face value. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I didn't think about that. Good insight there. Thank you for that. In what ways has the pressure to increase advertising revenue negatively affected radio programming?
Well, it's mostly that manifested in the increasing of commercial loads. So the pressure for revenue went to expanding commercials from 6 an hour to now 19 or 20 minutes an hour. And that's just not sustainable. God. You have 40 minutes of music. Are you kidding me? Like, no, this is not it. And this is just pure. Part of this is because here's the analogy I give people when they're like, why are they running all these commercials? And I said, because they bought a house in the mid 90s that was worth $2 million, and now the house is worth $100,000, and they still have to make the $2 million loan payment.
That's a good way to put it. I would have thought it's the other way, but you got to paint it like that.
Stations don't have that value anymore. They exploded all that value through all the changes that they made to it. And so now they're still having. That's why Odyssey went bankrupt. That's why iHeart went bankrupt.
That's why
another
every station
that's due in 2025. Who knows what's going to happen?
And every station has one director.
Correct, and it's one director for like 6 stations because it's a cluster.
Wow.
So they don't even look at them as individual properties. They look at it as a market cluster.
What kind of expectations are there on program directors? Like, who do they report to? What is that like?
I think they are now having to be brand managers, which we were always trying to manage the legacy of the brand. I mean, I definitely was doing that at KMEL and 92.3 The Beat for sure. But now it's kind of crystallized into, social media strategy and having to manage that and having to get the attention of an audience that is distracted on the phone and having no resources to do that because they're not investing in these stations. They're just, they're They're not putting any money out there. They're franchising everything. It's not an enviable position for the people that are in it now. And I always say I was talking to someone the other day, it has to burn all the way to the ground before it gets different. And that's horrible to say, but like, and I can't name the person who told me this, but they're a giant in the radio industry, and they said the same thing. The only solution is for it to crash completely.
Since we're kind of in the topic of sacrificing artist integrity and for profitability, can it be reversed? What would you do immediately?
Could radio be reversed?
Yeah, the artist integrity aspect for profitability, centering that as priority.
I think the way, because it is market to market, it's really pretty simple. It's finding out what the young people of that area want to hear, getting them involved in the station. I mean, not just in terms of
cleaning
airplay,
toilets,
community action, air shifts, club things like contests. There's so much stuff you can do. The radio, you have like a radio station
for sure.
Talk to anybody.
Like, people feel cool just representing you. Like, you can find people that are proud to just be part of it. Yeah.
And then you rebuild. You just change what that means. And it's a day-to-day grind. It's not going to be overnight, but you can absolutely do it. Absolutely do it.
Man, you really made me empathize with the DJs who have stuck around through all of this.
They're really going through it. My heart breaks for them. And the fact that they are still there.
Because they can't complain.
Respect, because they love radio. They
can't complain. What are they going to do? Even if it's that bad, right? They're not going to make a podcast telling you how bad radio is.
No, they cannot. They exactly. They can't. They really can't.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's see. What lessons should current radio professionals learn from the past to avoid further decline?
What lessons from the past? That's actually a really great question. It's interesting because everybody who is working in radio is a victim of a structure that they didn't choose. So, I would say that the mistake of the past was passing deregulation. Like I testified to the FCC. I said this was going to destroy radio. And they don't care. So if we could do a redo, I think no one would participate in that corporatization. I think everybody sees very clearly the mistakes that were made. But we're talking about 2 generations of young people now, the millennials and now the Zs, that have basically, through their bad product offering for 20 years, have been taught not to rely on this medium for discovery or for entertainment or for information.
Oh my gosh.
So what are you going to do when that's your business and you just chased your audience away? I don't know what the answers are. I know how I would go about it once it crashes, because I'm waiting. I've been waiting for 2 years.
Yeah, you made me wonder, like, imagine a world where radio was more popular than TikTok for a moment. That'd be
what's
sick.
So interesting is, why does Spotify want the radio element weaved into what they do so badly? Right? If the radio is so unhip and so uncool and nobody likes it, then why are they trying so hard?
Why are you both? If you hate us so bad and it's irrelevant, why do you offer it?
Yeah. And same thing, Apple with Beats One. Like, they've integrated that into the culture. Oh, here comes the fire department.
It's because you're burning the industry down right now. That's what's happening.
There's a 5-alarm fire.
Let's see. Yeah, you go wait for that. I'll cut that. Don't worry about
it. Yeah. So I forgot what we were talking about. Sorry.
Just radio. What they can learn from the past. That was the main part.
Yeah, and it's that.
Got you. I got you. How do you think the disappearances of MTV? I guess we already talked about that, but I was going to say within music and broadcasting, like the further, broader implications, ramifications.
Yeah, there's good and bad there. Oh, you were talking about would radio still be cool if there was TikTok. I think that if radio was really vibrant, like what that DJs would be doing TikTok lives, like you would see radio stations on TikTok live all the time. Do you know that they don't even know to do that? Like,
That's a good one.
because there's not young people.
I could be doing that. I didn't even think about it till you
Yeah,
said it.
like when you're broadcasting, do a TikTok live and be like, call me like, you know, and do you know where I learned this? The Z's at Z89, because when they pull shifts, they were like, they were desperate to get our account to 1,000 followers, because you can't go live on TikTok until you hit 1,000. And
Or
that was their whole mission.
or until if you make a store, FYI.
If you make a what?
If you have a store, then it'll let you go live with
Oh,
less than
good.
1,000.
Okay, good to know. Guy, you know, you're really the TikTok
I just learned that the hard way though, because I've been trying to get 1,000 forever, and then somebody's like, "You don't need it." It's like, oh crap. Still haven't gone live though, so if you
Yeah,
do achieve it, make sure you go live.
I think young people would like be having TikTok lives, you know, and you'd be able to see that, like you're able to see, you know, Taylor's concert in London. You go through your screen at night, and it would be like, you know, like back in the day, it would be like Julio G on the air with Notorious B.I.G., and you would see the live. And it would be happening in radio, and you'd just be able to experience it. But they're not thinking like that, because there's no young people at these stations to say you should do TikTok live.
Damn. That's the most basic thing too. In an era of digital media, is there still a place for radio's traditional role in music discovery and curation? Sorry.
Yes, there is. But it would be market to market. I mean, you know, it would have to rebuild from place to place to place. But what's awesome is that, and this is what I think has emerged from D.O.M.E's expansion through the social media sphere, is I, for one, did not realize that the artists actually really understood that missing radio was a game changer, but they understand it very clearly. And I was heartened to hear that.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, they get it. They're like, I wish I could just get airplay on there. Like, it'd be so much easier.
Yeah, it would really make the level playing field a lot more fair too, in terms of competition.
Yeah, and you don't have to start nationally. You start local, and then you build. You know?
Yeah, like a record worked here, maybe it'll work in another market slowly over time.
That's how we used to break them. And by the way, that's also how you do touring. You tour, you start in your hometown, you sell there, then you go to the next town, then you go to that's how you build audience, market to market to market. And who's the biggest partner for touring? Radio.
Yeah.
And so radio missing is also hurting touring, because that's their tour partner.
I'm sure you know Wendy Day is the first one to say build in your backyard too.
Yep. That's where you start.
Damn. I guess we get distracted because of the internet, right? I mean, going viral in another country, you think, well, I'm doing something over there. Still doesn't matter though, because you can't go touch them in a sense. Is that what you're trying to get at?
Well, no, because I think, you know, and this circles back to what I was saying. I get in this argument about the community, because everyone's like, oh no, I have my digital community and we're all over the world. So I don't want to discount that. Yes, that counts. It counts towards discovery. It counts towards, you know, fan base for sure. But I need to go back to this communal nature of music. And this is why people like to go to festivals and experience music together live, or it is part of how we experience music, right? Is hanging out, and how we mostly discover music. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's our friends that we hear about it. And it could be a friend on a timeline, but you're hearing word of mouth most of the time from people that you trust. And that is, or has been traditionally, you know, in your hometown, in your community and neighborhood, because that's how everybody starts. So I don't want to discount it and say it's not important. It's just, like you pointed out, the fact that we don't have any big superstars is, I think, a side effect of the fact that we're all these spinning algorithms in these individual silos, and there's no collective agreement on who's next. And that has to come from the people, from young people, not older people, from young people need to have that say.
Damn. How has the relationship between radio hosts and their audiences changed as the industry has declined?
I think the hosts will probably tell you that the pressure, like artists will tell you, and you're an artist yourself, so you know the pressure to do social media is overwhelming, and not everybody's good at it. Not everybody
Mhm.
can get on a camera and talk, or I know that they're radio DJs, and it's like, well, you perform in front of a mic, but you're in a room by yourself, and DJs typically not the most photogenic people in the world. They have amazing voices, but they're used to being in a room by themselves, you know what I mean, or on with the listener on a call. So I think they would probably tell you that having to keep up with social media is a lot in terms of them reaching audience, because they're not doing it through traditional broadcast. And they're not allowed to talk, really. They are just announcers, where they just give, like, here's the song. They don't. Have you ever heard of DJs give an interesting fact about an artist, or give you any bio information, or
TV
no?
channels used to have that more than
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
And it's not because they don't know, it's because they don't have the time. They're not
Yeah.
allowed to stop the music, because it's just like a hamburger franchise McDonald's, that hamburger's got to keep coming out.
Keep the attention. You got to keep
So
the
shut
attention.
up.
Wow. That's a good one.
When we have research that says that like 85% of the people from the ages of like 12 to 55 consider a DJ or a local personality a friend or someone that's part of the family. Like, that's how people consider broadcast personalities, because you're with them every day.
You know 'em.
So you develop like this interesting bond with them, and they're in your market, so they're talking about like the bridge that's out, or that crazy thunderstorm, or oh my god, that new store that's opening, right? So you bond with them, and we have research today saying that, and like I said, 85% of the people are listening to the station for the personality, and these corporations are like, don't talk.
When we were talking about sharing music, you also had me thinking about vinyls, right? Like, that was such a personalized, like, I spent money, I worked hard to buy this. Now I'm sharing and having an experience to show you something. It was like,
Yeah,
it was a lot more personal than just like turning on a radio station.
yeah, exactly. And
It's interesting.
and the
Like, you're making
prize,
moments.
huh?
You're making like memories and moments.
Totally. And I have several memories of my life, of family events that were radio station promotions, but they were these big events that the station did, like a big concert, like a summer jam, or like,
Mhm.
Jonathan Brandmeier did a bunch of concerts. Like, these are family events for the station. And you're right, they're memories.
Damn, I like that. Do you see any positive changes or innovations in the radio industry despite its challenges?
Not right now.
Oh God, no!
I mean, what I'm hearing right now is the same thing that DeMiz is hearing on the label end, and that's that they want to just have AI do it all, which is bizarre, because the audience is literally screaming at the top of their lungs that they're not down with that.
I'm like, what are you gonna watch perform? Maybe they don't care about live performance anymore. Why risk it when you can make all the money in bots and streams, perhaps?
It makes absolutely no sense to me at all.
It's also like the artists that are touring now, they're gonna be the ones that hold the market too. So if you're making money, it's like, wow, what a spot to hold right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's the thing about the music industry that I've learned now that I've been in it that long, because when you were like 3 decades, I was like, damn. And it has been that long. Is that there was never a time where it wasn't changing. Never. It'll continue to change, and it will change and evolve and get better and address, like, this will happen. It's inevitable, because the audience will demand it. Now, how it changes, I don't know. But it continues to innovate, and it's also, things are cyclical. They come back, right? So look at the popularity of physical vinyl.
True. Exceeding CD sales, I believe, right now.
For the first time this year.
Wow. Kind of off topic, not really, but do you have any thoughts on Tommy Richmond record that's going viral?
The new one?
Yeah, just like, it's a radio record for sure, but just on the sound in itself, where music's heading with that.
I like it. I think that what's interesting about that dude is he immediately has a sound. Do you notice that? Like, I heard that and I knew it was him before I saw it was him. And I was like, oh my God, that's dope. You literally have a signature sound on your second song.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I think it's impressive.
It's a rhythm thing too. It's not just his voice, so that's cool.
Yeah. It's dope.
I like it. I like it. That's a good take because I haven't heard anything positive about him, so I'm glad to hear something. What could radio do to regain its relevance and connection with listeners in today's digital age? I know you talked about it briefly. We're talking about market to market.
Yeah.
Touching the community.
Yeah, it would be all that to regain that. It would have to be hardcore engaging with the new target audience. Because again, they're targeting people who are 45 and up, and it would need to go back down to 12-24. That's night and day.
Gosh. What about the role of radio and artist development? I know it's like non-existent, completely non-existent.
I mean, they have partners, right? You heard when the Tortured Poets Society, Taylor and her mom, oh my God, she's such a beast. Knows how it works though. So they did a whole promo with iHeart where she played top of the hour. They arranged for all of their pop stations to play the song and play the album at midnight. And she cut, custom liners and talked about so for that, like that was a good way to use it. There was no way to not find out that album wasn't out. Now that's for an artist who's in the 1%. For some of these independent like artists that are like really popping and in their neighborhoods and can't get recognized by the station, I don't know what the answer is. There's just, until it crashes, the doors will stay closed to them. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a small like NPR or something that's owned by, but none of those stations are. They're all like corporations.
Would it be fair for my answer to become your own media?
I mean, yeah, at some point, someone will figure it out, right? And get in and change it. Before in the 70s, which is, light years before you were born, I was like a baby. But top 40 radio, the way that when it was vibrant, the way it was for me in the 90s, that wasn't even like FM radio didn't even matter. People didn't even listen. It was all AM from like the 30s to the 70s. No one was even on FM. So, then they discovered, the frequency modulation of FM is so much wider. We'll play music. Like, so something like that will come back around because it always does.
Interesting. These things that would be so cool to find another band and we're like, all right, well, let's exploit this different type of radio. Gosh, that's cool. That's super cool.
That's how album rock started.
Wait, that's how what started?
Album rock, the artists that like Led Zeppelin and all those like old like 70s doobies and where they would make these expansive albums, Fleetwood Mac, because radio was playing, like they would play the whole side of the record. They wouldn't just play one song.
Wow.
So that's the way album rock kind of like
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Whoa, I can't imagine that actually.
Mm-hmm. And then the DJs would talk endlessly about like the musicians for hours. They would deep dive into the albums. Like,
whoa,
it used to be all just talking about the music.
Did you ever see VH1 Storytellers?
Oh yeah,
that was so good. The concept of that, right?
Yeah.
Damn. Yep. Yeah, that's basically what radio was without the visuals.
Yeah, because if you have a station, and I was always acutely aware of this, you have an audience that can tune in of millions at any given. Your cume could be in the millions of people. And so you're a service provider. You're not just there to make your money, right? Your service is to discovery music. We would pass along community information. We'd have a community calendar. We would do PSAs like, this was in the early 90s. The PSA was all about AIDS because people were dying. Lots of people were dying. And no one knew where it was like COVID. It's like, how do you get it? Well, we don't know. It went on for years, right? And then it was demonized. And so it would be things like that. Gang violence, doing actual direct work on the air, just being of service to the community. And that's gone. I mean, that's how you build the bond. Is you service to others. That's just gone out the window. The service to others part.
What advice would you have or offer to someone considering a career in radio today? What do you tell your students?
I tell my students the truth. That it's fun. It's an entry into all the other things in the business, but you're not going to make any money doing it. It's in its last throes of existing, and I literally have people who guest speaker, and the guest speakers are like, "What do I say?" And I go, "What do you mean? You say the truth to them because they're about to go into the world." But the same thing I'm telling you. At the same time, it's one thing has always been constant, and that's change. And it will change again. And they need personalities. Like the personality element, that's manifesting in other ways through podcasting, through TikTok. You know, everyone who is good at that is finding their lane. But they're going to need people pretty soon when they got to, rethink this at the next iteration. So radio's not just going to go away. Everyone's been trying to kill it off for 100 years. It's not going anywhere. It's free and it's in the air. All you need is an antenna to catch it.
Man, you just blew my mind because I was trying to relate to that one. My experiences. Oh man, it'll come back. Industry's trajectory. View and balance between nostalgia and innovation in radio programming. How do you view that?
Between nostalgia and innovation. So for programming, first of all, it's who is your audience, because everybody's programming to a different audience. But if your audience is, say, the young audience, then you involve those people. I don't know how else to say. That's innovation, is that you let them have a say. I mean, it's so funny because everybody, when I tell the story about me going to Cases to Key, and I was like this 16-year-old that was telling the program director, this is what's happening. I try to remind people about how smart was he to do that, because that is what you do. You involve young people. They will tell you what's going on in their world. I say this to my students all the time. Everybody that's in a corporate position, or even not corporate, even if they're just in a management or they're in a daily working job, or they're in their normal routine, even if they're in the music industry, they are not going to understand the cultural vibe the way that you understand it as a student right now, as an 18, 19-year-old person right now. Nobody can tell you more about your generation of what's on the verge better than you. So that's a superpower. And don't diminish yourself around older people and let them try to tell you that they know, because no, they don't. You know, and you're in charge. You're the ones that are going to usher in the next wave. What's going to happen next is going to be up to the Z's.
Super good answer. I like that answer a lot, actually. But my other thing that kind of blew my mind right now is, as you're talking about what you're telling students, I'm telling you, in 2011, when I went to college at Del-Mar to study sound recording technology, this professor told my mom, can't tell you there's any careers in this right now, but there are fields that will come from this and be made. And I'm like thinking, why is this only in music that we have these, like, what kind of field or profession teaches and has degrees, but just so uncertain about the future and jobs and money to be made? And why is it just music? It blows my mind to hear this as a commonality, like all aspects of production, recording, being an artist, radio, just music, exploited, don't know how to make money.
True on terms of the artist, but I would say a lot of this is similar in the television field and also with journalism. Talk about a job where not only you're not going to get paid and it's uncertain, but then you're going to probably get your life threatened, especially if you're an investigative journalist. And we need these people
for telling the truth.
Yes. So we're not the only ones. Like I would say right now, journalism has it worse. And TV people, people who pitch television shows, and films, they are taking it. The creatives are taken advantage of in likely much of the same ways. I mean, the story just came to light about the woman who actually invented the world of, what the Matrix that was stolen.
That wasn't the two brothers or whatever.
Right. That was stolen from somebody who sent a script in. So it's just that music is We're always front line for destruction, that's for sure. We're always the first industry to get disrupted.
A lot
I
of
don't know,
money, a
because
lot
we're
of
the
money
coolest.
in entertainment, I guess. Too much money.
Yeah, and everybody wants to be in it, and so it's really competitive. Um, it's really competitive. I don't know, and it still is. You know, weirdly, the industry has never been more profitable than it is right now. Like
Shout
they've
out
never
to the
made more money
journalists.
than they did last year, 16.9 billion.
Damn. But yeah, shout out to media and journalists for sure. I underestimated that. Can radio stations regain trust and loyalty? Disillusioned by the industry's commercialization.
Oh, they can win back the loyalty in 1 second. I know
Love it.
exactly how I would do it, but I'm not going to give away that idea because me and Demiz are going to go do that.
I
And
love
we
it.
could turn it. We feel like we could turn it within months.
Wow. Flip it on its head, literally. What are your thoughts on the future of radio in light of increasing digital consumption?
I think digital will just be a partner to it. So it's like, radio, if it was doing its job, would be like the discovery and communal and like talk about it. Like when you think about it, radio was the original social media. You found all your gossip out of the radio. So and then the digital will be the on-demand companion. So when you want to hear it again and again and again, although you will hear it a lot on commercial radio because that's how it's set up. Well, hit radio is set up to repeat the songs. But they'll work in tandem to each other if they were both healthy and right. And then you could just go to streaming to, hear your on demand, or when you're in the mood for a slow song and we're playing mix show.
How have music genres traditionally supported by radio been affected by its decline?
Genre is a function of the Billboard charts, not radio.
What?
Everybody is. That's backwards. Radio didn't decide genre. Billboard charts decided genre, and then everybody fit what they did to get on those charts.
Interesting. Wow. Instead of
I
just
don't like
making
genre.
music,
I don't like
just
I'm
make
not
the
a
music.
fan of genre. I think genre's stupid. I don't like it. When I was, KMEL, we played Nirvana, and it was a hip hop station. Why? Because Nirvana was fucking dope.
Just good music, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. What role can radio play in preserving the cultural heritage of music as we move forward?
I mean, first of all, they can represent the music of their area. That's right there.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Yeah.
You're like the most obvious ones.
Yeah.
How do you assess the impact of digital platforms on the traditional functions of radio?
I mean, just radio ceded its position to digital immediately. Like they just gave up. They were just like, oh, we can't compete.
Wow.
So they gave up the position immediately. It didn't have to happen that way, but.
Do you believe radio has become irrelevant in the age of personalized streaming and playlists?
Nope. And the reason why I know I'm right about that is because Spotify is trying to do an AI DJ, and they're all trying to do it. Like they all know that personalization, that's not why radio, they got it wrong. And I understand that engineer brain because I spent years at Napster, and I respect the digital guys and what they're building, right? I don't want to be disrespectful to them because that code and the stuff that they were doing, I didn't understand until I worked with engineers. Like, wow, that's like hard work, what they're designing, what they're doing. But it's a machine. And, for music, we're communal creatures. So we like to talk to each other and be around, I mean, I read this the other day that, and it reminded me that, yeah, that's right. We don't have this functionality. You can't comment or talk to each other about music on Spotify. Like you can't talk to each other about it. You just listen and then see what everybody else is listening to. But that's not the same as talking about it. Because when you love a song, all you want to do is talk about it. I mean, when I realized that that Billie Eilish song was about her brother, like I started crying. I was like, oh my God, she destroyed me again with another song. But then I just want to pick up the phone and talk to someone about it, right? Like, oh my God, did you get this from this song?
Yeah. You're making me think it needs to turn into a little bit of YouTube in that aspect.
Yeah, great for that. And the alphas are on YouTube, so I could be hopeful about radio, and the alphas could come along and be like, nope. So I say, if you
Also,
want to know where it's going, watch these alphas, because they're on this planet to absolutely destroy convention. I love, my favorite thing on TikTok is hearing from all the people that are freaked out that the alphas will not be, they will not accept the traditional construct of education. It's
oh my
hysterical.
gosh, my God. Um, when it
They're going
comes
to
to
be
like,
disruptors.
but when it comes to personalization, like, is there such thing as the perfect algorithm? Is it because that's what they're trying to go for? So do you think that's
No.
that? Do you think that's the actual problem? Is that they're trying to like, hey, there's some math that'll keep the listener forever? Like that's literally what they're trying to do.
And because that, again, that is their job, right, is to keep
Mathematically,
your attention for as long as possible, but you're only going to keep somebody's attention through things that are familiar and comfortable, and music is only going to be pushed and changed to challenge people. That's you know really big hits, when you think about it, are big hits, but when they come out, they're polarizing. You either love it or you hate it, and that's
hmm
always the biggest hit.
hmm
So algorithms are never going to be able to, they can only tell you what your history is and what we think you'll like. I've been arguing with the engineers about algorithm since 2004, 20 years. No, it's
can
not possible for a machine to interpret a human, and I will literally die on that hill. I don't agree it's possible.
what if it turns into the way movie theaters when they're talking to you in some like real basic voice to give you like facts about a movie before it starts? That's what I anticipate an AI DJ doing, where it's nothing like emotion behind it. It's just like some stagnant neutral voice giving you a fact, rolling into the
Mm,
next.
I anticipate the audience rejecting the AI voice
I hope so. I
and
hope you're
saying,
right.
nah, we're not doing that.
Yeah. And did you see all those playlists that Spotify is generating now just off, oh my gosh. Yeah, off like key terms that are most searched, like words like Gayat playlist or just dumb things, like trending words turn it into a playlist. And oh my God, kills me. How has radio's reliance on formulaic content led to a cultural stagnation in music?
Because if you're doing the same thing all the time, then it leaves no room for experimentation, right? So it's suppressing marginalized voices, people who are
Wow, that
different.
was my next question. Oh my gosh, that was my next
Music
question.
that's different. Yeah. It's just not, it's like chasing your tail.
So, is the radio industry guilty of marginalizing independent artists in favor of mainstream commercial music?
Absolutely.
Gosh, I didn't want to hear it. You don't want to take it back?
No, I think but it's gonna go, here's the thing though. In the last 5 years, and you're never going to hear this from the RIAA because they don't want you to know, the Recording Industry Association of America, was the lobby on behalf of the recording industry. The independent sector of artists has, in the last 5 years, has grown from about 10 or 11% to 30% of the market.
Whoa.
So this is going to keep the terms of ownership and distribution are rapidly changing. And I'm telling you, the exhibition aspect, which is the, showcasing and the playing and the performance and then marketing of this, is going to change right along with it. It's not going to change in a vacuum.
I'm trying to imagine how it's going to be exploited even more so with AI. I'm thinking of all the posts, you and the Miza post, probably come up again. How do you respond to the view that radio is dying? And if so, is it worth saving?
I think it is worth saving because it is a free resource and it is a community thread. And I'm very, very big on, especially now, we need to get back to building our own communities. We've gotten too fragmented post-pandemic. The pandemic, I think, did a number on our culture. So we need to go back there, but I don't think it'll ever be killed off. However, I'll go back to saying I'm curious to know what kids of 10, 11, or 12 are doing.
Wow. Yeah, it's true.
Because that's the next, everything that I'm planning for now is for when that kid is 16, 17, 18. That's how you have to think in the music industry.
That's what I was going to say. Reminded me. When we were talking about how AI labels are just going to have different versions, sped up, slowed down, and then fans can make their own versions of the artist's song, and then they could probably sell that. I was thinking they're going to incentivize it. Like labels will just pay some independent person who made some cover of a Taylor song or a new Taylor song. Now they'll call it a Taylor song, and they'll incentivize that kind of behavior by making that person rich. So now people will just be making covers of AIs of other artists and be like, yeah, that's what I do. I make songs of different people in their voice, in their vein. That's going to be a thing, like certain
I agree with you.
specialized.
I think that will go through a period of that, but just because you want to be Taylor doesn't mean you are Taylor.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe it's a ghost market that's going to emerge. If maybe that's what's going to happen, a ghostwriting market.
sure, it could be, and a UGC like portal that it just monetizes itself through all of these user generated like ditties. But there's a reason. I mean, a song that is truly masterful and touches the world, that's channeled through another place, through that artist, and no computer in the world is going to be able to do it. I do not worry about AI taking that from artists because, and this as a creator, there's nothing that is coming down into the algorithm from source, but that is not the case with songs. So, we're spiritual beings that are existing in an electromagnetic field, and music at its bottom line is a frequency vibration that we attune to. No computer is going to be able to do that shit.
I hope
They're
you're
going to
right.
be really close, and they're going to do their little dumb little BBL drizzies and their stupid little shit, but they're never going to be able to make something that's going to move you to tears.
Can you recount a specific moment or conversation that fundamentally changed your perspective on the radio industry?
A conversation that changed my perspective. I will just tell you that when I got the music director job at the station, and I just graduated high school, and my program director told me, don't ever, ever, ever take any money, any bribe for a song ever, because if you ever want your ads to mean anything or your opinion about music to have any weight, you will not stain it with money. And that burned in my brain.
Damn. So the ongoing criticism of radio's relevance and quality, what radical changes would you propose? I mean, you don't have to go into the ones we know about, but is there any that you would like to put out there publicly?
The most radical change is they've got to pull all of the commercials off.
Damn, I thought you were going to say community. I didn't expect that one. But commercials, really. People are drowning.
Pull them off.
Wow.
They're never going to win. Not in the age of Netflix.
So
and
true.
You should just do title sponsorship. This hour is brought, like NPR does. This hour is brought to you by Ford Motors. That's all you get.
That's not bad. Super simple too.
Yeah. But if you didn't have a mortgage on a $3 million home that's worth $1,000, you could probably do that. But they can't do that because they have to pay the $3 million house payment.
And what you just said would be perfect just in between each song. You don't need these long ads. Like there's a 3-second interjection if you really wanted to really hammer that down of the ad.
Yeah. And here's another thing. So I love Jon Stewart. Who doesn't, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And I listened to, he just started a podcast, this week, what is it? The weekly show instead of the daily show.
Wow.
He has 3 commercials. There is a title sponsor. He does 2 live reads during the podcast, I listen to those fucking live reads because Jon Stewart's funny and he personalizes these dumb
The ads.
commercials to him and his personality. And so you listen to the commercial.
I love it.
And so that's what they need to do, is go back to, if you're going to do a spot, you do not break for commercials. The DJ, the personality, which is why they are important and why they should be there. They have the trust of the audience and they have the personality. They're human.
Yeah.
Should do the live read.
Add some humor to it. Add a twist.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, make it feel natural, that it doesn't feel like an ad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I told my friends in LA, like, if I had to do commercials right now, I mean, I wouldn't have any say because I'm a PD and none of them have any say. But what I would do if I had to run spots, LA is filled with stand-up comedians. I would make every single spot a stand-up comedy thing, like that you would just be rolling in laughter for 5-6 minutes. And if the client didn't like it, too bad.
Damn.
It's going to be funny or it's not going to run.
With the decline in radio's popularity, should broadcasters pivot entirely to digital, or is there a unique value in traditional broadcasting that still matters?
I think that there is still value in it. And again, we have research on this. We have research that radio is one of the more effective mediums for advertisers to actually reach an audience, because people really do listen. The example I gave you with Jon Stewart, right? I'm really listening to the sponsors. That happens with local personalities when they read. Again, the free aspect, I want to keep going to that. People are always going to be punching in. I agree with you that they're punching right out right now, but eventually if it gets better, they'll punch in and they'll stay. So I think it'll always have a lane. And the great fear for many years was that the connected car was going to kick FM off of the dashboard. It hasn't.
Yeah, like I remember thought Sirius would be like the broad, I don't know, standard of radio at one point. It didn't happen.
Do you know why?
Mm-mm.
Not
Ads?
because it's not great, because Sirius is amazing. It's because there's a paywall and people don't have money for 50 subscriptions, which is why radio is going to survive.
Wow. Well, great way to come full circle. All right, we're coming down to the last handful of questions, and they're more personal. Like, you could take your time to answer these.
Okay.
Throughout your career, who was one person who challenged you the most, and what did you learn from that experience?
Oh, Clive Davis.
Wow.
He challenged me the most. What did I learn? I learned from that experience that I do not have the desire or the moral vacancy to do anything possible for a number one record.
You're like, I value myself and my morals.
Yes.
It's good to know. I mean, anything else on that you want to touch on? I mean, that's a pretty big key figure.
He was extremely challenging to work for.
Wow.
He wasn't mean. He was
had high expectations.
Yeah, and I learned a great deal, so much. But yeah, I always thought I wanted to run a record company, but not after that. I was like, oh, actually, I don't have the balls. Like, no, I'm not that gangster.
Have you ever had an on-air or behind-the-scenes experience that you think about often, and what makes it memorable? It can be more than one.
I mean, God, an on-air or, not really on the air. I wasn't really on the air that much. There are so many experiences, that are just burned on my brain. Most of them are sad. The one that just comes to mind is being at the radio station, waiting for Notorious B.I.G. to show up and do an interview, and he's next door at the Peterson Automotive Museum, and we're waiting for him to come over and talk to us. And it was the release of the album, right? The album release party, and he never made it. We all know what happened then.
Damn,
insanely sad.
That was literally like on Coming to You Next.
Yes.
What?
The beat was right next door to the Peterson Auto Museum on Wilshire. So he was getting in the car to go to the beat. And we weren't even far. We were literally one block up. But, he's not going to walk. And that's what happened. And that was so sad.
Damn.
And it was also really bizarre and weird and,
Like just
what
lot
just happened?
like hard to believe.
Yeah, like just surreal.
Wow. What was the feeling like at the time? Like New York
Shock,
and
shock and disbelief and horror and sadness. I'll never forget the look on everybody's faces, because it was BET weekend and BET weeks. Everybody was in town. And it was just, that was the beginning of the end of the hip hop golden era. That was
wow.
the beginning of the end.
Wow. I don't even want to talk about Diddy, but I have some thoughts on him. Looking back, is there a decision or action you regret in your career? How would you approach it differently today?
Do I have any regrets? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Actually, no. I mean, I was going to say, after I went through 9/11, and it freaked me out to the point where I couldn't deal after going through that. And I left New York.
How far were you? You were like near it?
I was in it. I was one of those people who are running for their freaking life.
What?
Yeah.
Little minor detail. You want to talk about that or not really?
It's
too much.
Yeah, a year of therapy, the crazy shit that I saw that day. And also another thing that people don't realize about 9/11 is, sure, there was that day, which is freaking horrifying. But then there were people that were running through the streets for weeks after, searching for their family.
Yikes.
And like all the subway stations were like filled with missing people posters. Have you seen this person? Have you seen this family member? Have you seen, and then it was horrible.
Wow.
It was thousands of people. And they're really bad. So, I mean, if I could do anything over, I don't know. I don't know. Did I run out of New York too fast? That happened in September. I was gone. I was back to Cali by January. I was like, I'm out of here. And if I could do it over, maybe I should have stuck it out a little longer and seen if I could do something else. But then I don't really regret it, because the station that I went into in LA is where I met, developed, and worked with Michelle Visage. And Michelle Visage went on to partner with RuPaul and literally change culture with the Drag Race. So
wow.
I don't regret it, because I don't know if me and Michelle had ever come together. That was really powerful working with her. So wow. I don't know. Yeah, I think I don't really have regrets, even things that went wrong, because you look back on them and you learned from that.
Damn, that was good. I definitely appreciate you sharing that one. A little touchy there. What was the most unexpected turn your career took, and how did you adapt to it? Is that the answer for that one? Did we just talk about it?
No, that was when Joe Fleischer, who is a guy I used to work with at Hits Magazine, he had this technology called Big Champagne in the early days of file sharing, when Napster first came on the scene. And I'll never forget Joe Fleischer coming to my office with the stacks of data. And, I've always been a research geek, always. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, oh, Michelle, I want to show you this information. And it was 50 Cent, PIMP, that song. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, it said 255 million. And I was like, oh my God, 255 million people shared that this week? And Fleischer goes, not this week, Michelle, yesterday. And I was like, holy shit.
Wow.
I gotta go. That's when I realized I can't stay in radio, that it's digital, and I gotta go. The audience was leaving. I knew it that minute. I was like, uh-oh. And I went to Napster. That's why I went to work for them.
Tell me about that. That's a crazy story too.
That was amazing. Again, I worked with a group of people who were really different. They were tech people, which is why I always emphasize that when I'm talking about tech companies. They're not music companies. They're technology companies. Their goal is tech excellence and the perfect algorithm and the most sticky homepage. And those are the things they geek out on, where we'll geek out on a bridge or a certain melody or a chord, right? Mm-hmm. They'll geek out on functionality. It's totally two different worlds. But what's weird is that both are are created out of like it's creativity that makes these things happen. They're creative with their code. It's just the way they do it. Um, so it was a really great experience. And at the time this is years before the iPhone. We were working on the first iteration of mobile streaming. It was called Napster to Go. And it was a nightmare because the licensing of music was so difficult, and we were Napster. So imagine me, I was the vice president of label and artist relations. So my job was to go around and explain to the music business that,
good luck.
you guys, the MP3 actually isn't gonna go anywhere, because they really thought that like if they shut it down, that like, oh God. Yeah.
Wow. So,
it was fun.
I mean, we know about the war of labels trying to stop piracy. How did you feel about that aspect of, being in on it early?
I mean, I don't believe in the piracy of copyrighted material. I'm a writer. I don't want people stealing my work either. I'm sensitive to that. But Napster put out and this is something no one talks about, the attorneys who worked on this will tell you, they put out a note to their subscribership, which at the time I think was 86 million people, and said, hey,
wow,
if we charge you a $5 gate key to still have access to all of this music, will you pay it? And over 90% of the people said, yeah, because they didn't want it to go away. So they would have had $5 right then. But the RIAA wasn't interested in money. They were interested in controlling distribution. It's about controlling the supply chain. And this was the supply chain getting away from them, because the labels control distribution, right? Through physical. They totally controlled it, and most of the channels. So this was, oh my God, we lost it. So that wasn't the real reason they shut it down. I mean, piracy was certainly a huge reason, but they had an audience willing to pay. That could have been done. The RIAA chose to go to war.
I never knew that. I just thought it was about piracy. So you think piracy was just a guise as a reason to shut it down?
Yeah, they wanted to, it was easier. Just let's get them for a copyright that they've already.
What's the easiest case? Out there. The easiest case to bring against to shut them down.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow, never knew that. Can you share a story about a time when you felt your values were tested in your professional life? Take this money, Michelle.
Yeah, no, that was at the record promotion people were all cool. They knew I didn't play those games, so I never got those shady offers. Demiz and I talk about this a couple of times too, because all of these weird conspiracy things on TikTok about the shady industry and underground. I was at the top of this. I worked for Clive Davis. Okay. I never saw any of this.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm not going to deny that these weird parties were going on. Yeah. I heard about the puffy parties, but no, there's not this weird, it's a cutthroat business. Yes. Guys like to prey on women. Yes. This all happens in every aspect of our culture. Do people go to strip clubs to do business? Yeah. So do Wall Street. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing like really.
Are there any good memory artists, like experiences that you had met or maybe interacted with that you still think about? A lot of people don't give like credit to the good experiences. We usually remember the bad ones or people that rubbed us the wrong way.
I had so many awesome.
No favorites.
I mean, I love D'Angelo. He was amazing. We broke his record, and he was just such a cool person. Mariah, I think, is an amazing person because she's so smart about the business. One of the smartest artists I ever dealt with about the business, like really understood like things like media base and how her record got played and how the label worked. Never knew an artist who's that smart. Wow. There's a reason that woman is that rich. She's smart. I loved Common and his manager. They were so nice, so appreciative of us getting behind them. Biggie was a sweetheart, such a nice person. So many artists. God, Maxwell, awesome. Oh God! I mean, obviously, my relationship with Eazy-E, who I loved and adored, and wish people knew knew the other side of him. Because, you know, he's Eazy-E, he's, you know, NWA and ruthless, but he was such a consummate and admirable business guy, like a smart person. I've learned so much about business from him. And I used to say, why don't you let people see the side? He was like, what are you talking about? You know, he was like, fuck no. But yeah, he was fave.
One of my good friends recently said that he sounds just like DJ Quick when he raps. DJ Quick sounds like Eazy-E, and I was like, oh, it's so true. It's funny.
Quick's
But
dude,
legend, been around forever.
Yep.
What's been the most emotionally challenging aspect of working in radio, and how have you managed it?
For me, it was the inability to have work-life balance. And if I could do anything over, somebody asked me this recently, it would be like, I would take a vacation, because I never did.
Damn.
I worked all the time, and I loved what I was doing, but these corporations don't care about you. So giving your life at that level, what are you doing? So that was my mistake. And I try to tell my students that all the time. Like, you know, although I think this generation is much more attuned to like work-life balance, not in the 90s, we worked like dogs.
Also, I didn't ask you what your favorite artists were. Like, what kind of music were you listening to, hip-hop wise?
All of this music is what I listened to. I literally was programming what I loved.
Wow.
I listened to all this music.
Wow.
And my whole life. Like, that was my whole thing. It was like, hip-hop is going to be the next thing. Hip-hop. I was known for that. So, I mean, in terms of like, even when I was a young person at the station, everybody like, I heard her rap stuff. And I was like, no, I swear to God, this is going to be a wave that you don't, this is going to be a 10,000 foot tsunami, you guys. Like, I see it coming. And this is the story that I tell my students when I'm like, you're out there now, you know, you see the wave. The old people don't see the wave. Wow. Only you see it.
It's so true. Man, it's true. And it also makes me realize, like, I trusted my gut when I was younger too. So I'm glad you're reconfirming that. Is there an artist or song that unexpectedly touched your life or shaped your career? Can you share that story?
There is, and it's random and weird, and it was like towards the latter half. But when I got blown out of my job at the Beat because they sold the radio station, so they were like, "Thank you very much." They gave me the boot on a #1 book, and I was just floored. Like, it was like hitting a wall going 90 miles an hour. I was like, what?
Left field.
And so I was completely disillusioned with the business. I, you know, sold my house. I moved away. I went back to San Francisco. I went back to school, and I was so depressed that I could barely function. I just did not know what I wanted to do with my life. I never thought that was going to happen. And there is an artist named Murs, you know that guy? He's a hip-hop artist. Anyway, he's on Warner Brothers. He has a song called Everything, and the song is literally about not giving up. And I would listen to that song on repeat every single day, just trying to hang on, because it was just wanting to lights out. And that song got me through that period, that one song. And I was able to tell him years later when I was at Dash Radio.
Wow.
I booked him to come in, and I told him the story, and I was like, your song like literally saved my life, and I just want to tell you that.
Man, it's so funny though, because even as an artist, I wish that I could feel what that means, you know, but it's not. It's like they're just some words, but you know that person was like highly affected or changed. You just wish you could experience it, you know. That's crazy though. That's a really cool story. How did you get out of that? And then how did you get the job at Syracuse?
So how I got out of it, I highly recommend meditation. I think that it is a key to calming the mind and kind of getting to the center of yourself and checking out of the noise, because we're like in a noise matrix. Is it me, or is the world just
It's very loud?
It's
super loud.
So it's good for that. And then how I had somebody come to San Francisco and talk me into going into the publishing world. So I went to Primary Wave Music Publishing, and to try my knack at, instead of, you know, artists, manage different creatives, which are songwriters and producers. What's interesting is I love that so
really
much, so much more even than artists, because songwriters and producers are just, if not more creative, but they don't have that weird performer thing going on. So they're not strange people. They're like normal people.
Thank you for the compliment.
It makes them easier to work with, but still inspiring, right? But they're not artists. Artists are, it's funny. My students ask me all the time, what do they like? And I'm like, they're not like people. I don't know what else to tell you. Like they're different, especially the really, really special ones. They're wired different. They change the molecules when they walk in a room. Like, it's really interesting. It's hard to explain.
Man, one of my friends a couple days ago was trying to be involved in one of my projects, and he was just trying to see how interested I was in like taking direction. And I was like, dude, do things for me. I don't even care. Like, I need as many people involved as possible. Like, the more you take off my hands, the better. Just speak for me. Like, how many people really say that? But honestly, that's how that just goes to show how much I trust that person, though. Really.
Yeah. Well, and also you clearly have a collaborative spirit.
For sure, because dude, I know nothing can get accomplished by myself. No matter how much work I put into anything, who's gonna find out about it at the end, or how am I gonna put it in the world? I can't do it alone, no matter what, no matter how much you dedicate to the project.
Yeah.
But a couple more questions. We're almost done. What's the best piece of advice you've received, and who gave it to you?
The best piece of advice. That's wow. That is a really hard question. The best piece of advice. I mean, I don't know who told me, but it was the quote that I had said earlier about just following your passion and be passionate. If you're passionate about what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't remember who told me that or if I read that quote.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like one of those cliches someone famous said, but I'm not sure who it was. Definitely.
But someone said that to me, and I took that to heart.
Still very true.
To just feel driven, like purposeful.
Yeah.
There was nothing like a new song being delivered and running into the control room and being like, oh my God, let's play it. And it's going to be the debut to like all of the, a metro area the size of San Francisco or Los Angeles, and being able to debut that to the world. Like, that was so exciting to do. And we used to do that every week.
Dude,
because it was during a period where there's so much new music coming out.
Movies don't even give you that feeling.
Yeah, it's true. But it really was like that. It was like, oh my God, there's,
Wow. And then just capitalizing on that, any thoughts on content being king for the future? Like, artists should be making content and documenting everything. Do you agree with that concept?
I do, but I acknowledge and respect that not every artist is going to be good at that, that this is why they have to have people around them that assist. Even if it's just your own crew that you're involving yourself. The video thing is really important. I don't see a way forward without it. I mean, you were asking too, like radio, how they can fit better into the digital world. Radio's not going to be able to exist just in an audio form moving forward. It's got to be a visual format too. And they're doing this, right? Yeah. We see these podcasts like this and are always visual. So we're not going to be able to get around that. Music too has to be visual. So you have to this is where the collaborative spirit has to come in. If you're an artist and that's not your strong point, then you got to find people who can be that for you,
Also, to emphasize on the community aspect, an artist that's like one of my favorites, I'm helping him put together a tour right now. And he said, before we even do this, he's like, I know people want to see it, but I think we should put the story together. So he started to come up with, we should definitely do a whole documentary, make the projects, film the projects in the process. He's like, people want to be seeing the conversation we're having right now on the phone. And I was like, whoa, like to hear my own favorite artist say something like this just took me back. And he was basically just reiterating the value of content, like saying that he had suffered so much in his career from the illusion of the mystique, saying that that's all dead. Nobody cares if you don't tell your story anymore. They want to be part of it. They need to know who you are, what you stand for. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree 1,000% because the authenticity is everything. And there is no more mystique. There's no more creating, it's like that people will see right through it if it's fake.
Yeah.
And yes, the content's always going to matter, always.
And it lives forever too, right? Like a tour is a one night thing. You think of how Taylor Swift capitalized on the eras,
But also, I guarantee you, well, first of all, we already have the concert film. We know that they're filming. There's going to be a documentary.
Didn't even think about that. Didn't even think about that.
There is no way that when that tour wraps, that a documentary is not coming. She's running tape 24/7 on everything.
Wow.
And also the reason why you don't see anybody like Sabrina and the people opening from backstage is I guarantee you that there's an NDA they have to sign because they're all part of it and filmed. And she doesn't want people to know what she's doing before she drops it on the world. So she's, I can't wait to see how they deal with all of that content and all of that storytelling.
Wow.
Do
you also think artists will take a playbook out of that going forward? I wish hip hop could do that.
The smart ones should. I don't understand why more artists don't pay attention to some of the simple but really effective marketing tricks that she does. And what I'm constantly trying to get to the bottom of, and I can nobody. She's so insular that I literally cannot find people to continue answer this question, but I'm dying to know, like, who is making all of those strategic decisions? Is it really Taylor and Andrea just by themselves? Because generally that's what I'm hearing. It's her and her mom.
Wow.
That's staggering if that's true.
Damn. I mean, but she's
that creative and that strategic. What is your IQ, bitch? Is it like 192?
I actually think it's just because of how long she's been in the game, honestly. Not an IQ thing, just like seen it all since teenager, exploited all the way to now, type of thing. Wow.
And just getting it all done and doing it all in house. But you know, and I pointed this out in the next round of videos I'm going to do on socials, but despite all of the stuff she went through with Big Machine, and I explained why Big Machine has the right to keep the masters, despite all of that, she could have gone indie, but what did she do? She signed with Republic Records. Why do you think she did that? She's the biggest artist in the world. She could be an indie and do everything herself, but why would she go to a major label?
It's the same reason Drake, no?
It's exactly the same reason, because record companies are still good at two things: investing large amounts of money and amplifying globally. They still know how to do that.
Damn, that's not going away, I guess. Wow, just bring them the hit and they'll push the button, but they're not doing it until you get to the end.
Yes. And I'm now going through that as a author with the publishing community, because they're exactly the same as the labels. They're like, well, you're unproven and you don't have a following. We're not going to sign you. You got to build it yourself. And I'm like, oh my God, you guys
don't care about my resume or my experience, but okay.
Right. Or like who I can reach for that. Okay. But that's what I've been repeatedly told. And I giggle because I'm like, oh, well, I got to put my money where my mouth is. I've been doing this for artists for years. So now it's just weird being in that position.
After this question, feel free to speak about your book, and we're wrapping. Reflecting on your career, what is one moment of personal triumph that stands out to you?
One moment of personal triumph. Honestly, it was, and it circles back to the part of the question I didn't answer when you asked, is how I got to Syracuse University. And it was because how I got there, they tracked me down. They literally, the program director of the band year program went around the industry. He was the former editor of Billboard magazine, so he has a lot of industry contacts, and he went around to people and was like, who is somebody who has integrity, that can be trusted around students, that is like high moral value, can do. And multiple people in the business referred me, and I was kind of like a underling at Primary Wave. I didn't have any seat of power. I was like trying to crawl my way back into the industry, and because of how I operated, always with integrity, being as kind as I could. I was tough, but
Following your passion.
yeah, following my passion, and it paid off because then out of nowhere I get this incredible offer. And I tell people all the time, this is true. Nobody goes into education for the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's the lowest paying job I've ever had, but it's the most rewarding. And it unlocked a superpower I didn't even realize I had. I didn't realize I'd be good at teaching.
Speaking of that, can you emphasize a little bit on that more, just in terms of how it just came to be? Like, it's not a common thing to become a professor in general.
It's not, but part of it has to do with, one, this is a music industry program, right? So I'm uniquely suited to be able to do this. Second of all, not a lot of people jumped back and forth between the radio and the record. You're either on one side or the other. And I was back and forth between both sides and went to digital and did publishing. So I have a wide variety. But how that happened, a lot of our business, honestly, is, and I hate saying this, I say it, but it's true. It's right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
You can do everything right. And
see, and when you were talking, coming full circle about your gigs at the DJing in the club, or
right
even
place, right time,
even the radio stuff, were you getting paid for these too? Because oftentimes following your passion, you're doing things because you want to do it. So were these paid gigs?
the club was a very well paid gig. And then I would work 3 nights at the club so that I could work for free during the week at the station, because I was an intern at the station. I worked for free
There
for
it is.
the first 2 years. 2 years.
Whoa. Whoa. Okay, that's what I needed. I needed that one to reconfirm the value of quotes free work, when it's really the experience and the time
and the
all
connections and proving yourself.
Wow. Yeah, invaluable. Promote your book and websites. Anything else you want?
Well, I wish I could promote my book, but it's like, you need to find a publisher. So I have I have a manuscript called Radio Phoenix that is about this very topic. I explain through the lens of my career from the mid 80s through 2000, the trajectory of the industry going from this really localized, vibrant, collective business to basically being a bunch of empty jukeboxes, and try to explain to people how and why this happens. And I trace the entire business timeline and through like my own career as well. And so, yeah, it's a memoir about that. I talk about the old music business, the way it used to be. Like, for instance, when we would have conventions and all get together, they don't have these anymore at all. It was another era. So I'll find a partner. I'm not worried about it. It's just taking a little longer than I thought, as we don't get our dreams in the time that we want them. We get them in the time that they need to happen. So it's taken a minute. So I'm doing that now, and then when I'm setting up a website now, but because my last name is, you couldn't even read it, I can't have a Michelle Santosuosso website like that. No one will ever find it. So I have to come up with, like, what am I going to call it so that people can find it? So this is actually a meeting with a social media expert tomorrow that's going to help me like narrow down my brand stuff. Like, what do I do here?
That's
How
hilarious.
do I do this?
Super first
So you
world
never
problems.
stop learning. Even all of this experience I have in brand development in the business, but I come down to this new lane of it, and I need help.
I know we didn't really touch much on like ASCAP or Sound Exchange, SoundScan. Do you want to lay anything on those topics before we go?
Hang on, let me turn on the lights. It's getting dark here.
Got you.
What do you want to know about ASCAP and Sound Exchange?
Just, I was thinking about how inefficient jukeboxes are for data, and not really, I'm sure it could be so much better in terms of tracking data in clubs and spins. Like, the jukeboxes could easily have Shazam built in, and now we got better data, for example. Like, just inefficiency of these things not being reflective of the true data.
Well, ASCAP and BMI and those collection societies, they have staffs of people that go out to all of these businesses to make sure that they're license, that they're not playing music and don't have a deal. In fact, because my students will be like, they're not really doing that. And I'm like, let me tell you a story about a karaoke bar here in Syracuse that thought they were cute and did 3 years of karaoke without paying ASCAP.
Whoa.
And they got shut down because they owed so many royalties. You can't do that. They will find you. Public performance is 52% of the royalties for composition. They're not, you don't do it. Don't play music uncompensated. Like that's what they're set up to do. Now, Sound Exchange, they're mechanical collections for online radio. And so that when I was at Dash, basically what we would do is we would send a sample of our logs. And so they would have logs direct from Music Master, and they would evaluate it based on that. I think they do a better job than they ever have in terms of collections, but I agree with you. There's stuff that can be automated that can make it better in terms of making all of the public performance count and be compensated for, which is, by the way, another reason why radio being dead is a problem. Do you know how much royalties people make off of a hit record on the radio? What that pays?
Not very much.
A lot.
Well, I mean,
a ton of money.
Yeah. For compared to what an actual show would be, though,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Interesting. That is interesting. What about we didn't talk about like media base, or there's another one I just lost in my head.
Yeah, media base is the tracking of the airplay,
which most people don't know about at all.
Oh, that stations are electronically monitored?
Yeah, nobody knows that. Nobody knows what media base is, I promise. Most people do not know what that is. That's interesting.
Then they really won't know chart metric.
Yeah.
But these are important tools, right, for us to find out what's going on. I don't think media base, because we talked about who radio's targeting, is much of a factor, but it's interesting to see what people are playing.
Any last things you want to promote? Social media?
Michelle S. Fresh on both platforms. So at Michelle S. Fresh.
And you don't have a website yet?
Yeah.
Not yet.
No website yet, because what do I
for sure.
I can't call it Michelle S. Fresh as a professor.
Michelle Super Fresh is what it means. That's good.
Well, I'll figure it out. This is part of the challenge, right? You don't ever stop learning. That's the exciting part. Like, I'm having to relearn all of this stuff, and it's huge. Right? It's a huge learning curve. I'm going to my students about how do I do the Instagram buy. It's funny.
Last one. Live Nation, Ticketmaster need to come down. Last thoughts on that?
Break them up.
Tear them down.
Just break them up. They should be separate.
It's so funny how they're going to argue that they are separate. They've been operating separate.
No, and that's a flat out lie, because if that was true, they wouldn't have a consent decree in action from the Justice Department.
Ooh.
Doesn't even expire until 2025. They're currently under a consent decree for bullying venues 5 years ago.
Wow.
In Atlanta, and they caught them because they emailed each other about it.
Whoa.
So I just think that power concentrated in one spot is not good. And it's not working for artists, they'll tell you. I just think it should be broken up. And the fees, don't get me started.
Yeah. Double the price. One ticket really costs $2.
Since the first online ticket was sold by Ticketmaster, which was a long time ago, it was in 1996, same year as deregulation. Since that time, the price of concert tickets has gone up 275%.
Whoa. What the? Yikes. Yeah, there was a time tickets were $5 to $10, y'all.
And Pearl Jam got an award with Ticketmaster over just $2 service charge.
Wow.
And Ticketmaster pushed back even then.
What? Wow. Yeah, they're like, we got all the lawyers in the world. Let's go.
Totally.
My gosh. All right, Michelle, this has been more than insightful, even though the show is called More Than Rich. What does the term more than rich mean to you as a last question before we go?
More than rich, that you have a multi-layered life that's not singular.
And and fighting off the cops in the back.
Ah, they're busy tonight. I
Multi-layered.
literally live next door to the firemen.
Oh man. Well, at least
I mean, these are the guys that run into burning. But if that was a cop station, I would have a problem. I don't like cops.
True. Oh my gosh.
But I salute the firefighters. Like, isn't that funny how we feel differently about those two factions?
Definitely, but I have trauma I haven't gotten over yet either, so a little PTSD on mine. Long story.
From a fire?
No, from police. That's why I related to you on that.
A cab all day. I was taught to avoid police officers at all costs from the time I was a child.
Wow.
Not a fan.
It says a lot. Well, hopefully when you get your book back, we'll have you on again and you can talk about it. Yeah, when it's completely out. Cool. Appreciate your time today. Be in touch. I'll let you know when this is out.
Nice to be here. Thanks.